What's going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadskii, back again here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video, and today we are back with a showcase video of the brand new versus Kaido character. V2 versus Kaido when you think about it, along with Yamato. Now, this video is only going to be pertaining to Kaido in normal content. We're going to obviously, discover a little bit about this guy in Pirate Rumble, and we'll have a look at both the Yamato side of things when we get around to it, of course. But, I mean, the special animations for this character are phenomenal. What you saw at the start of the video were not only his special animation, but also his versus effect animation and his final tap. So in this video today, we're going to show off what he's able to do in some, more modern content. We've got a couple of relatively difficult arenas. We actually have him against the Kizuna as well. It's actually really exciting to see how he kind of performs there, because typically we don't get to test out, like, newly monthly released characters during a Kizuna so quickly. So that's all obviously really fun to do. And then we'll also obviously test him out against one of the old school Garp challenges. So let's start breaking this character down, see what he's all about. This character is an int-driven striker with a captain ability that boosts those two classes of striker and driven by 5.5 times with a matching slot, 5.25 times otherwise, on top of giving a 1.5 health boost. So he's a very bulky captain. Of course, if you're inflicted with despair, you do still get a lot of that HP removed, which is a little unfortunate. He also will passively make int and tandem slots matching to both striker and driven, and also changes recovery slots into Wano. So while he has a lot of HP, he doesn't actually allow you to really recover that much, because you're not going to be seeing recovery slots naturally as a captain. But in turn, giving you more damage output is obviously very nice. He also has a really unique kind of utility effect in his captain, being able to resist 10 turns of special reverse and special bind on himself only. And while that isn't always amazing, the fact that this character can do that makes a lot of sense when you have a look and see what his special is capable of doing. He also has another really cool added utility piece of effect, which says that anytime you launch a special that is an attack boost, an orb boost, or a color affinity boost, he will automatically add 0.25 to that boost. And the cool thing about it is that this effect in his captain that will passively buff any attack, orb, or affinity boost doesn't actually put a plus icon on that buff. It's passively going to upgrade it, which means that this actually stacks, and it does say in the captain ability itself that it will stack with other boosting effects. So if you have another special that says, buff an orb boost, or buff an attack boost, or buff an affinity by a certain value, that stacks with this guy's captain ability. So this character is focused on doing as much damage as possible, and this captain ability definitely facilitates that. And also to further facilitate in terms of the damage output that he's able to achieve, he has a very powerful special as well, and I would argue that this is probably one of the most powerful specials in the game, but they definitely offset it by giving a pretty drastic drawback. So the effect removes all beneficial effects placed on the crew, which can be good offensively, defensively in a utility sense, but also might be bad as well. So he removes the beneficial effects, and then also says that after you launch this character special, you can only use 2 more specials for the rest of the run. And this is a big red flag, and this is what a lot of people saw, and people were kind of discussing whether or not they actually like this character, but I'm here to show you today what he's capable of doing. It is obviously dependent on the content that you're coming up against, because if it's long-form content, you don't want to be using this character's special early. You want to be using it as late as you possibly can, using all of your utility and gimmick removal effects first, then launching Kaido's special near the end and your other boosting effects to get as much damage as possible. So there's a lot of drawbacks at the start, but then you get minus 20 turns of cooldown to the entire team, which is just crazy. Like one of the best special charge units in the game. So you get the cooldown, left slots are changed into tandem slots through block, and then right column slots are changed to Wano slots through block slots. So you get a full board of matching slots, which is fantastic. He will also go ahead and provide a 3.25 times orb boost to striker and driven, and a 3 times attack boost to striker and driven, both of those buffs lasting for 2 turns. And of course, when you have Kaido as a captain and you launch this special, the orb boost will passively increase to 3.5, the attack boost will also passively increase to 3.25. So yeah, when you have a character that is essentially able to give you a full team Toki buff, essentially, it's kind of nuts, right? Especially if you're running double Kaido, because both captains will buff the attack and orb boost, becoming 3.75 and then 3.5 times respectively. And then you can also stack, you know, other boosting effects on top of that. So you can see how this can spiral out of control very quickly. And we've seen how Toki has been used in the past, where only 2 characters with that buff being able to one-shot bosses. And if you can do that for the whole team, yeah, you kind of understand why they put a pretty restrictive drawback on this character special. And you'll even see during this Ashura Doji fight, on the last stage, we have to use Drake's really bad orb boost, which is a 1.75. Kaido will buff that. With double Kaido, it gets buffed to 2.25. And even with a really shitty orb boost, to be honest, and then Kaido's attack buff, and also his Versus effect, which we can also discuss. The Versus effect being able to do end of turn damage 500 times his attack, which is a lot. And also increased damage taken, 1.5 times increased damage taken is inflicted to the enemy, ignoring immunity to status effects. So not only are you getting such a massive attack and orb boost, the full border matching slots, and fully charging all of your character specials, you're also getting increased damage taken that bypasses everything. So again, just all of these stacking effects together, providing massive unga bunga damage that this character is just able to wipe the floor with essentially everything, right? As long as you're able to get that Versus effect to activate, you're gonna be good. But this is probably where one of my biggest qualms comes with this character is it is very difficult to get this character's Versus effect to activate because you need to consume 10 Wano or Tandem slots, and he has no effect in his captain that will generate Wano or Tandem slots faster for the team. And that definitely hurts because when you have a look at the other character like versus Yamato, for example, the character on the flip side of Kaido, her captain ability does make Tandem slots appear more often. Now, I haven't actually tested Yamato in content yet. However, with that captain ability alone, I know for certain that her Versus effect is going to be much easier to charge, comparing that to Kaido. But when you have a look at both of the Versus effect, I would argue that Kaido's Versus effect is far more powerful. So I can also understand why they would make him in such a way. However, also, adding on to that, the fact that he is built in this way with his special where it has such heavy restrictions means that he's only really going to be very useful in short form content. Or, you just conserve this special for near the end of content and then you can just spam it, get a massive attack and orb boost, and then you're good to go. But the fact that he is so good in short form content, yet the Versus effect is so hard to charge up in short form content, it's counterintuitive, and I think that that's really going to hold back this character unless if there is characters you can utilize that allows you to get a full board of Wano or a full board of Tandem at the start of the quest, just to enable you to get a really good head start on his Versus effect in the first few stages, so that when you reach the last stage or when you reach a burst stage, you're able to launch that Versus effect to get all of those massive effects such as end of turn damage, increased damage taken, which you can use in a utility sense just to get through a stage that has resilience, for example. Or if there is no normal attacks only, 500 times his attack in non-type damage for 2 turns, that's going to be really good, and you can use it in a speed farming sense, or just getting rid of really pesky mob stages. So that is obviously going to be a bit of an issue, but it is dependent on the scenario, dependent on the type of content that you're coming up against. But the Versus effect that he has is very powerful, but just very, very difficult to achieve. So that's obviously one major issue with the character with the Versus effect, but I also have another major issue in terms of Kaido's side of things with his effects, and that really spawns from his final tap, because I believe his final tap is just not that great. The fact that it only really provides a base attack boost is very underwhelming. When you just look 12 months prior and we had the release of Luffy and the Straw Hats, and even just a couple months before, right, we had the release of K-Dad with their final tap. And I think that this would have been a great opportunity to have a final tap that is kind of similar in that same vein, where you have a final tap that allows you to get, extra added bonus damage, potentially if a striker or a driven, counts for normal attacks, you add that damage at the end of your final tap. That would have been a really nice way to top off this character. Considering this character is so hard to use in Kizuna, for example, I think he will be kind of hard to use in a Super Boss Kizuna, because I feel like Super Tandem Kaido is going to be probably the way to go. And yes, you can stack these characters together and get all the benefits that way, but I think it's going to be difficult considering you want to have lots of damage dealing buffs, and I feel like Super Tandem Kaido is going to be an easier way to achieve those high damage numbers comparing it to this Kaido, but I guess it is dependent on the boss that you're coming up against. If you are up against a side boss, you may try and go out of your way to utilize Versus Kaido instead, just due to the fact that he'll have that type advantage, which will increase your damage by a pretty significant portion. But that's also the thing. Super Tandem Kaido we've seen throughout the year, that even if you're in a situation where he doesn't have type advantage, as long as you have like 2 or 3 characters that can hit super effectively, it's not going to be that big of an issue, because all of these damage numbers stack together just so well, and they synergize amazingly together. You know, it's just coming back to this final tap though, it's just underwhelming that he has such interesting abilities, but he has a very bland final tap of just base attack boost. And while yes, it definitely increases his damage by a little bit, it's just not enough in my opinion. I would have preferred to see at least some other type of additional effect to the crew in some capacity. I'm not really too sure what they could have added, but I think that just, you know, for a New Year's character, just to add base attack at the end, yeah, look, I'm not really a big fan of that. Even if they, like, buffed your attack and orb boosting effects by, like, 0.5 of each, I mean, maybe that's a bit high, but something along those lines I think would have been interesting. Something a little different, you know? But that is pretty much it from me to us talking about versus Kaido. He's a very fun character to use, and if you're able to facilitate that versus effect, you know, he's going to be an absolute monster. Just the damage he can deal is so crazy in short form content, but there's obviously a few drawbacks. Versus effect is difficult to charge. His cooldown naturally is very high, so you do have to stall for quite a bit. You do have to stall for quite a bit anyway if you want to get that versus effect ready to go anyway. But that is going to wrap it up for me. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to be uploading a lot of videos over the next few days, all about these New Year's legends, so hopefully you guys are looking forward to it. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you guys did, make sure to go ahead and leave a like, and if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. On that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.